breakthrough to make small shifts in thinking using mind models, which enable them to gain the clarity needed to accomplish their goals faster and more easily. And tonight we're going to be going through some of our belief systems, 10 beliefs that can make anyone highly successful. This is beliefs number 4, but you got to remember that with mind models and in the Blair Dunkley experience, we focus on how things shift. So beliefs are important, but behaviors drive beliefs. So we always look at the beliefs in terms of the behaviors that we need to do to be able to execute and make things happen. So we want to, in this belief, focusing on what you can control or influence. So focus on what you can control or influence is the key focus and the belief and the behaviors that we're going to do. Now, I want to just sort of jump on and share a couple of things here. So what are the beliefs that actually, not beliefs, but actually, let's go back to mind models. So what are those things, those mind models that we may have taught before? And if you haven't been on, Beth, have you been on here for a while, or is, I know this is the first time as a participant?
Off and on.
Okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
I was on for a while when you first started, and then I've had a lot of other webinars on the same time, and so it's like flip a coin, you know.
Oh, I hear you. Yeah, I should be on another webinar. I never make it because I'm doing this one, but I totally hear you. So, okay, so one of the key things that we want to pay attention to in this webinar is control and versus influence. So what is it that we can control, or more specifically, who is it that we can control and who is it that we can influence? And I'm okay, go for it. Okay, Beth, fire away.
Just ourselves
words.
is the only person we can control.
Self is the only person we can control. Correct. And so who can we influence? Who can we influence, Beth?
I think there's a bit of a delay, Blair.
Okay. So
we can influence everybody.
You're right. Everybody else, anybody else other than self. So that's really a big piece of the puzzle. When we know that we can only control ourselves, that gives us the ability to start shifting. So how do we make that shift? What mind model do we use? Dwayne, what mind model do we look at using?
To make a shift in what? Our thinking, our actions?
And to take control of ourselves, what do we want to do if we're going to start shifting ourselves? What do you think we'd want to do? Like a best guess. What's one of the mind models we could use?
Effective versus ineffective?
Absolutely. And what do we do when we start with that effective versus ineffective? What else is there that we want to take a look at?
Process.
Absolutely. Process versus what?
That's what I'm trying to think of.
Okay. Okay. John?
So what's the opposite of process, Dwayne? What's the flip side of the coin?
Stuck.
Yeah.
Okay. John?
Content. Process versus content.
Okay. So, and stuck is a process that's going nowhere fast. So I'm going to have to throw that one in there, but it's one of those things. Process is flow, and when we don't have flow, we don't have movement, and when we don't have movement, we're stuck. And people can be stuck in a place for a very long time. Individuals who know how and understand influence start working to take a look at how they can influence the people around them. And what are they going to pay attention to? Best guess here. So, John, what do you think people are going to pay attention to?
I'm gonna go with ask versus tell. That's another mind model. Is that what you're looking for? Another mind
Actually,
model?
that's one of the mind models. I wasn't, well, okay. So ask versus tell is going to be there. I was hoping that you'd go for question, but you went to the
Okay. Well, yeah.
precursor.
Questions as the part of ask versus tell.
Yeah, absolutely it is. So I go full points there because you just hit the nail on the head for that whole thing. And within ask versus tell, we're going to take a look at how to create a shift. So, or at least notice what we're doing in terms of what questions do and what telling does first. So if you want to follow me along here, I'm going to see if I can effectively share my
Your iPad?
my iPad tonight, and it's up and it's going.
That was dangerous, Blair. Usually we try it before we get started, and it.
Well,
anyway,
I had
this time
it
it just worked first
partially.
try.
Yeah, I know. Hey, I'm almost getting good at this stuff.
Wow.
You should show up unprepared more often.
Yeah. Good way to do it. Yes. Just wing it. That's the way to do it. Okay. So, who would just like to ask me a question? Just anybody, shoot one out. Just any question.
What can you do to influence people?
Purple. Okay. So, what can you do to influence people? That created a question, correct?
Yes, it did.
So there's a question right there. And it is now, it creates a boundary of reasonable responses, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Great. Now, an unreasonable or outside of the box response was more or less what I stated, which was purple. So that was a color right there. Is there any way that that fits inside the box? Anyway,
You're
John,
still speaking English. You answered it in the same language it was asked in. That would be the only thing I could think of.
Okay. Even if it was that, John, is it inside the box or not inside the box?
No, absolutely not.
Absolutely not. Dwayne.
It's not in the box. No.
Beth.
It's outside the box, but you asked if it could be inside the box. How about if purple, you were asking influence, and colors influence people?
That's true, but is that a reasonable response? Is that something that somebody else can actually make sense of?
No.
No. So we don't want to. So what you and Trevor sort of tried to do there, and what we don't want to do is we want to try and find a way to extend my box and somehow get that X to be perceived as somehow part of the bigger box.
Yeah, I was definitely stretching.
Yeah,
it included all of the English language.
Yeah, exactly. So we really don't want to do that because there are very critical boundaries here for what's reasonable and what's unreasonable, or what's normal and what's crazy. My response, and having worked for many years with many people who were having very serious mental health challenges and were literally crazy, or mental health challenged, seriously, their responses could be literally off the wall. And that's sort of where I realized this model here. No matter what you do, if you ask a question, the answer, the question you ask actually sets the boundaries for where that answer has to fall within. So no matter which way you slice it, this one over here is ineffective. You can't bring it into the box. Therefore, it's not part of the set of possibilities for that answer of that question. What does that mean? That means subconsciously, or sometimes even consciously, our brain recognizes all possible answers and defines the boundary for where that answer has to fall within. We may not know the exact answer, but we know where it has to be. So if the answer generally doesn't sound correct, it probably isn't. So what we want to do is we want to do something else here, and we want to start being able to manage and control ourselves. Beth, you stated very correctly when you said that the control over what we do actually is over ourselves. How do we apply questions to ourselves? And how we actually do that means sometimes we're stuck. And Dwayne and John, you were talking about or inferring stuck states earlier, which means that we're in this box that is existing here and we can't really find a way to change it. My suggestion is, what if we asked ourselves a different set of questions that was just a smaller subset of this box, and we keep on shrinking it down? And this model is what I refer to as precision questioning, but it's focusing on what we can control. Precision questioning, actually, I get into a little bit more on precision questioning is another mind model. But in short, it winds up by asking different questions, we can get to where an effective answer probably is, and we can get back to saying, this is where the answer actually is. Okay, so that's part of what we're doing. Most people don't adjust the questions that they ask, and especially themselves. Okay, so we're going to take a look at this and just do a little bit of practicing on this briefly here. So on yourself, and this is reflecting to yourself, what questions might you ask to shift yourself? Okay, so the original question was, Trevor, fire away.
Oh, geez.
Sorry.
I forgot what I asked you. Does anybody else remember?
Like, what can you do?
What can you do to influence people or something?
Right.
Yeah.
So what So what can you do to influence people? What's a smaller subset of that question that you could then ask?
How to get someone to trust you?
Not quite. I want it tighter than that. That's like almost like asking another question. I'm going to draw a different one. So the first box is this box, and you asked a question and saying, okay, there is an overlap here of those two. It may have a similar answer, it may not, but it's massively shifted away from the primary question. You follow me?
Yes.
Dwayne? Okay, cool. So what I want to do is I want to look at the language itself and say, how can I shift that language subtly, not significantly, but tighten the box to literally get to this second layer of...
I got an idea.
Okay.
What can you do to influence people in your organization?
Okay, so tacking on in your org?
Yep, that works.
Okay, that's fine. And so that's another one. And who are we focusing on? What can you do to influence people? That's very generic. What can you do to influence people in your organization? If you're unsure about what you can do to influence people, is it probable that you'll be able to figure out what to do to influence people in your organization?
No.
No, it's not probable. So this one is, again, it's almost just shifting it down microscopically you know, bringing it down here, but it doesn't really get us much closer to that. Okay, that actually helps me move forward. Not really. It's almost tracking over the same line.
Okay, so if I was just to make a small shift in that, then I would say, what specifically can you do to influence people?
See, if you keep on placing it that way, who can you control, first of all?
Just myself.
Right. So if I'm looking at this and going, how can I control myself? Who do I need to ask the question of?
Yeah, well, not drop the you altogether.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that is, one of the most obvious places to start frequently. And it's subtle. It's not big because you're talking to yourself. How can you, like you talk to yourself sort of like in the third person sometimes when you're stuck. So what can you do, Blair, like you stupid idiot? What can you do to influence people? Come on, what can you do? What can you do? What can you do? Okay, you ever have those conversations in your head? I don't know about you, but a few decades ago, that was a very common conversation in my head. And with all the stupid and everything else. However, but when I make it about me and just start saying, quite literally, what can I do to influence people, everything starts shifting. I might be stuck, but I've actually taken it down a lot because I've reduced some of that overhead of everybody, like you. It's not generalized, it's gotten specific to me.
And I've switched it from maybe a question that might be used to influence someone else to actually working on myself.
Exactly. And it might work.
That changes, that moves the box for sure.
It moves the box and it actually tightens it when it's about me. Like you asked me a question and I need to not stick with the language that you asked it to me in. I need to actually take a look at that. Okay, so I have to shift that question. And it's stupid simple, but I can't, back in the day at Life Skills College, when I was training students in this on a daily basis, this one super, I want to call it stupid simple shift broke so many people free when they used to beat the crap out of themselves because they'd repeat exactly what you said, what I said to them, and then they'd beat themselves up. As I role modeled before. John, you had something that you were almost wanting to say.
Yeah, so in this shift, what I'm seeing is that in the first question, the you could almost substitute the word anyone. It's so general. What can anyone do? It's this general, how do we define influence? And whereas what can I do? Now we're starting to get, okay, what can I do in my current situation?
Bingo. Now you went to current or specific, but it's now a situation. So, actually, let's do this. So all of a sudden we've moved it out of people and got it broadly from everybody, any possible human being on earth, into a situation which is probably already constructed with the people or the circumstances, all of that in there. It's already in your head because you've defined it as a situation. So you've got limited numbers of people in there. You've got limited numbers of variables, and it's not everybody everywhere in the rest of the world. Do you notice how the overwhelm starts going down? And we actually start being able to, didn't quite want to
move from general to specific.
Exactly. And we are able to now actually, you didn't mean to quite do that, but start really chunking it down to a a smaller box. Do you notice how there's a flow to this? Does it feel like there's a flow? Dwayne, are you getting the sense of this?
Yeah, and I'm getting the sense that will it flow into my situation right now?
And now you've just tacked on everything the same, and we can tack on right now. And what we've done just by adding these two words is bring it to the moment. And there are some other ones that we can say that can open up possibility thinking. And I haven't, well, did I do 3 magic words? I think I did 3 magic words quite a while ago. So I'm going to jump into that one. So we have what might, which is one of the 3 magic words, I do to influence I'm going to go me, or I'm going to go me or myself. I'm going to go myself. In situation right now. Okay, that starts getting it into, so what might I do to influence myself in this situation right now? And you know what? This is the first time an answer sort of popped into my head immediately without any effort, just by asking this question: what might I do to influence myself in this situation right now? I don't know. Did you guys have anything? Well, for myself, to gain more clarity, I'd go, the answer for me is, I want to ask a question. And not of me, but of Trevor. If I asked you a question, would that help clarify would that be an influence to you in any way, shape, or form?
Yes, absolutely.
So all of a sudden, I've been able to come full circle by taking this seemingly innocuous process of reduction, breaking it down, and coming to a simple thing. And when this skill is practiced, it can be done in fractions of a second and gets a person resourceful and gets them unstuck very, very quickly. And I was just actually editing one of my videos that I'm going to be putting up for a couple of my clients on ask versus tell. And this is the exact, well, very close to the way that I wound up doing it. I didn't quite break it down into these questions. I didn't write them down. I just said them something similar to this, a slightly different topic. But it comes down to, you can only gain clarity. And I've gone through clarity versus certainty on here. But clarity is a questioning process. And certainty is a telling process. And if you keep on telling yourself stuff, you'll stay stuck, because it really doesn't tell you anything new. You're just going over what you already know. But questioning will help you connect the dots in your brain. And if you don't have enough dots, data points, if you will, you then can go out and ask questions to seek new information. So either way, asking works for creating a flow, for moving away, or for just testing an idea to know that that doesn't work. Then you can just simply ask a question. What might I do? What might it differ in? There we go, differently. So what might I do differently? And it's amazing if you just stop and break down that one simple little question. What might I do differently? And you can always throw on right now or now.
Or
specifically, which is another one of the that gets all of the 3 magic words. What might I do specifically right now? All of a sudden, boom, you're right into the flow of the 3 magic words. So that's a huge difference. That's a bit of a game changer. And people who start asking questions gain more influence. And when you ask simple questions, especially in a more complex situation, you can tend to have more breakthroughs faster. And it's really strange. I mean, I don't know how many times I've been commented when I've gone into a company. I don't know anything about their technology or whatever. I just listen to how they're talking, and they're not asking very many questions. They're talking at each other. They're not asking questions of each other. They're just talking and stating, no, that won't work, this will. And they just tell them, then the other person, that won't work, this. And they're all judging everything. And you ask, a simple question, how do you know it won't work? How do you know? And then they say, my experience. Well, have you tested that in your experience? And they go, no, but I know from my experience that won't work. Well, you're stuck here, and you've brought me in because you guys have been stuck at the same income level for the last 2 to 10 years, or you're in decline. And they bring me in to ask these questions. And you go, when might you decide to test to see if it's valid or not? And how can you run that test as cheaply as possible to see if it's valid? Where can you go? How can you take this and move this forward? How can you move yourself to that next level? What might I do in my own business to see if I can move myself forward more effectively? What might I do differently? John, you're smiling away. What's happening?
This sounds like playing out the evaluation versus judgment. When you're stuck in a situation, it's like, there's all this you use the word judgment. It's also telling, it's defining, this is not working. It's really this intense focus on kind of holding on to what is and what the problem is. And this questioning process is sort of like suspending all that judgment and just starting to be curious
and look at the possibilities.
Yeah, it's all about getting yourself curious and creating possibility thinking. Possibility thinking is impossible without curiosity. It's also impossible without questions.
And that questioning of what might I do different? That's kind of a form of evaluation. And when you say when might it be time to test or whatever, those are
right.
That in itself is kind of evaluative.
It is. Pardon me?
Is it now or later? Am I sick enough of this current stuckness that I'm willing to let it go long enough to try something else? I mean, it's almost that kind of.
And when you make a statement like that, it's like it's stupid simple, or it feels like it is. And yet very few people actually break out of their own box and they stay stuck, unfortunately, frequently for years. And because they're not asking simple, fundamental questions like this. This is what makes mind models so freaking powerful, because they get down to root cause. They get down to, how am I thinking? What assumptions or what patterns have I built up over the years? And how can I make it simple to break through and to shift down to something at just a step or two deeper? So let's take a look at some of the assumptions over the years. I went away for some training this last week with Trevor, and I went away. And we went into a level 2 workshop at EMP. And that was excellent stuff that Tim was up there teaching away about webinars and how to do like a more modern version of a webinar, how to update it. And I had a number of different breakthroughs. But one of the things that between the book that I'm reading right now about marketing and advertising is Breakthrough Advertising by Eugene Schwartz. It's 125. I have no claim to this at all. Like, I'm not going to make a royalty or anything or an affiliate commission. I just go, this is one excellent book. Breakthrough Advertising, Eugene Schwartz. Titans of Direct Response Marketing, Titans of Direct Response Marketing.com, something along that line. Anyway, I'd have to look it up. Just hit me up and I'll post it, or we can post it later. The bottom line here is that book was originally written, the first version of it was written in 1966. The fundamentals still apply. And reading this and listening to Tim, I had a huge freaking breakthrough. And that breakthrough for me was, I mean, everybody who's into marketing and internet marketing and moving themselves forward on the internet probably has heard of, you got to find your avatar. You have to define your avatar, blah, 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 blah. Well, for me, an avatar was all this. I'm not saying everybody does this. I'm just telling you what I did. And I've been stuck on this for years, for at least 2 to 3 years, because I've been trying to define avatars for at least that long, if not 5 years on this whole thing. And I have not been effective, and I'm pretty effective with people. So what I've done is I've taken what I thought people were saying is find somebody who's in your market and model them and make that person your avatar. I've been told that verbatim, and I've done that. And yet my avatar stank. It didn't work. It sucked wind simply because my model was too defined. Between what Tim said and what Eugene Schwartz said in this book about, and I'm modeling this, it's not about a person. An avatar is not about a person. It is about a representation in a combined entity that you speak to like a person who represents a marketplace. And that was my breakthrough. What do people in that market all have in common? Not what does that person, what is that person's language, but what is the market collectively concerned about? Not what is that person collectively concerned about that's in that market. So it's like doing 180 degrees. And that was freaking huge for me. I got the breakthrough, and it's like, okay, I get it. And when I was up practicing my my little mini webinar and using the language that I had pulled from about 6 other people at a different table, all of a sudden the language spoke to the more than like the rest of the audience that was there. It spoke to them, and it went, wow, that was really effective. That was powerful. So just sharing, we've got to find a way of asking the question differently. And I had to turn my whole idea of what an avatar was 180 degrees around and sort of stand it on its head and go, it's not about a person. It's about the representation of a market as though it's a person. And that was my aha moment at one of many in that workshop. Hope that's effective, but that's also how you can start taking control and influence and applying it to a market, not just a person. So sometimes we have to question ourselves and ask ourselves how we're approaching a different type of scenario, and is it effective? So the question that I keep on coming down to, and that I finally got an effective answer to, was this one here. And it's just, what might I do differently right now? What might I do specifically differently right now. And that includes all the three magic words and starts moving me functionally away from the whole ability to hold on to my model, and opens me up to that that scenario. And one of the things that it also does is it shifts me to a slightly different portion of a mind model, which I wanted to share with you guys tonight. And we have three conditions that always exist. And the first condition is we are always there. So there's always yourself in the mix. There are almost always, not always, but almost always others in the mix. But there is 100% of the time, this area people forget about. And they forget about it frequently. And it is the situation that they're in. The situation that they're in influences the self, and it influences the others. And there's like, think of this. You're sitting at home doing all the stuff and a situation happens like 9/11. Everything changes because a situation occurred someplace else in the world that has dramatic ramifications to everybody. It's huge. It's not a small thing. So it's a big deal, in short. So that big deal impacts self, others, because of the situation. We don't frequently think about that. We just notice that it's there, and we don't deal with it. We don't utilize it as effectively as we can, or we don't pay attention to it like we need to, and we tend to ignore it. And we just go with self and others because those are the obvious two. Pay attention to situation and your ability to start influencing the situation is going to be directly driven by the behaviors you respond to the situation with. So you can help manage that situation. You can help manage others by controlling yourself. So that's basically the only point here. Now, the sweet spot of everything is right in the middle here, where we basically just go, this is the overlap where we want to try and get to as best we can. And that self-other situation overlap area is the sweet spot. And that is where the magic happens all the time. Anyway, that's about all I want to say on that, unless you guys have questions about that. And this is just, I mean, I can spend days going over self-other and situation. This is not a small area, but I didn't want to dive into the depths of it and redo patterns and show people how they are stuck or unstuck. It's just pay attention to this and recognize that again. So, Dwayne, how do you influence others in situations? What's the number one way to do that?
Question.
Right? That's exactly it. We want to actually start asking questions. So your ability to ask a question influences and impacts in the sweet spot. And that's where you have your biggest impact by far, is when you can get it into that sweet spot. You can say it the way that others and the situation respond to it, and that is a big deal. And think about it in terms of marketing. Think about it in terms of selling. That's what I was doing with some of the people in EMP coaching that I was teaching the IBC to today, is showing people how I can choose how to use the models, the mind models that I teach in Igniting the Buying Conversation, and flip them around so that I have bigger impact on people right there, and was able to influence somebody to move forward where the person who was role modeling it wasn't able to move that person forward because they didn't look at it differently. and they didn't ask themselves questions to help them get unstuck and influence the other person more effectively.
What were they doing?
2 seconds. I'll get to that in a sec. Dwayne, you had a quick question?
So is positioning yourself as the authority in a situation, is that part of this influencing?
Yes and no. I didn't actually, I became the authority, but not by positioning myself. I became the authority by asking questions of that individual to determine gaps. And those gaps became in the role play that the gap really was that they had bought another program, not EMP. They had bought another program, and they had buyer's remorse, and not necessarily buyer's remorse, but doubt, wondering if they bought a program that they were really looking for, or they're just throwing money, good money after bad, and buying just another program that will teach them nothing more than they've already got. So by asking a series of questions, I was able to quickly determine they had a dream to go get another course. Their fear was the comparison of they might have bought ineffectively. That was their gap. So can I show them something that they might know about the course that they're going to buy and the depth of what is likely going to be taught? And can I make it 2 times deeper, 2 times more effective, and show them something that is a bigger deal for them right now? And I was. And sure enough, partway through, the person that I was role-playing with said, damn, if that was me, I would have bought right now. So I knew that I made an ineffective decision, and the role play continued on, and the person was trying to figure out, how do I get out of that deal and get into this one? That's where it went. And you can't influence by sheer telling, but sometimes you have to find that gap and then fill in. There's a big difference. Ask, tell, fill in. We have that as another mind model. And if you guys got to go back and listen to it, because ask, tell, fill in. Fill in is giving information that the person may not have, and you fill in with that information. You don't tell them stuff just by spewing extra junk at them. You fill in with critical chunks of information. And it's sort of like what I'm doing here. I'm assuming you guys don't know the mind model of self-other situation as deeply as I do. So I'm filling you in, hopefully with new information.
That's a pretty safe assumption.
Yeah, it's pretty safe. Trevor, you were sorry for cutting you off, but Trevor.
I think, I was just asking what was the other person doing, but I think with where you went with that sort of, it shows me what you did instead.
Yeah. The other person really was focusing on trying to dig the fears out, but the person didn't have any direct fears associated to not getting information because they were resourceful. So you have to listen that extra level deeper. And that's what I did, is I listened sort of 2 levels deeper and said, what is their real concern here, their real fear here? And how come they're even looking at me, signing up and jumping on something when they've already bought a course? They haven't started yet, but how come? What's causing this to occur? And buyer's remorse, possibly, but definitely they wanted to make sure they bought something of value and the best thing that they could get for their money. And when I showed them how we could give something even deeper, how literally, EMP does this. EMP actually is excellent at doing this stuff. You sometimes have to dig for it, but at the end of the day, EMP has knowledge base in there that few other internet marketers know actually how to do and get that information out and make it executable. And that's one of the things I really like about Tim and Matt and Fernie, they've got such practical background and knowledge. And Tim is pretty eloquent in being able to figure out how these things need to be positioned and what that magic piece actually is. So anyway, just sharing. Okay.
Cool.
With that, I think I'm going to wrap this part up. So any other last minute questions about this? Does this make sense to you guys?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm just going to go Dwayne, Beth, John, in that order. What did you get out of this program thus far?
The question process, I just really enjoyed that, trying to, instead of taking it from this big generic piece down to a smaller bite-sized chunk, something that I can, you can grasp hold of and actually take a step forward with.
Excellent. Glad to hear it. So yeah, no, you can start chunking it down. Jamie, earlier on, I think you wrote here, how's this different from the 3 magic words? Well, it isn't. It's actually a twist on a belief system of how to use the 3 magic words. Might specifically now are the 3 magic words, but it actually was tying in. And you guys, for those of you that haven't been on before, and for those of you that haven't heard it before, I'll just fill you in. Mind models are designed to be stacked one on top of another. So we will use a mind model like 3 magic words. We will then stack that on to ask versus tell. In this case, I reversed it and went ask versus tell, then 3 magic words to start getting a more resourceful state, and then re-ask a bunch of different questions to gain clarity more specifically and simply to move us forward. So we keep on stacking different things. And again, we're utilizing the questions to move us forward, and we're utilizing the questions to actually open up other areas. And then we also used evaluation versus judgment and effective versus ineffective. All of those start getting stacked on there. But we keep on going down. I keep on trying to peel the onion down. What is the foundation of this one? This one here, the real foundation of this one is, again, it comes down to ask versus tell in this whole piece. But that is the piece that we want to pay attention to, so that we can start taking a look at influence. Because if you're telling yourself stuff, guys, like one of the key points of this whole webinar is that I guess I haven't stated it, categorically, but here it is in a nugget. So one of the key things, if you are going to gain control over yourself, you have to ask questions of yourself. Because if you keep asking questions of everybody else but you, you're not going to be able to integrate the information into you. It takes you questioning yourself. What might I do differently? How does that make sense to me? What can I do to apply this? How can I behave? How effective was my behavior? Was it effective? Was it ineffective? How do I determine what's effective or what's ineffective? How do I do this to me first? Then it goes to others and the situation. But you start with yourself first, because if you can't gain control over yourself, you're lost. Because there are so many times I've seen people, ineffectively apply the mind models because it's you, and you, and you. You're not using the mind models properly. You aren't doing that. So I'm not getting what I want in my life. That's not about that. Okay? It just doesn't work that way. Honest to God, it doesn't work that way. I have to shift my behaviors so that other people, here's the rub. Even though it's influence, you don't have complete control of where they go or what they do. You just have influence. But there's this I got a backstory here, and it's a cute one. We had the boyfriends over. I got 2 daughters. And we had a Christmas tree contest last night, and I posted on Facebook. If you want to hit me up on Facebook, there's a contest there of which is the nicer looking tree. We lost from the official judges vote, but I'm hoping for a comeback in the People's Choice Awards. Anyway, I don't think I'll win, but anyway, my point being here, boyfriends were over, and they're both very smart young men, very, very intellectually capable, academically capable, and just all around great guys. That's cool, but they were arguing logistics. And I gave them one of the discoveries that I made in human behavior decades upon decades upon decades ago. What's true on one hand, the opposite of it is also true. It's not false. It's true. And that flies in the face of certain scientific principles, but at the same time, science can't explain certain things where two things that should be opposite aren't, and they're both true. That conundrum exists in nature. It's not just me making this shit up, because that actually does exist. But you start taking a look at that, and you start taking a look at how this applies to myself. And when I start asking questions of myself and getting curious, I can control me and my behavior. And what's true on one hand, the opposite of it is also true. Although I am in control of me and I can only influence somebody else, the reality here is this: if I change my behavior, the other person must change their behavior. So there's an element of control. So even though I can only influence, I can also control, but it's not a controlled thing, so it's only influence. So what's true on one hand is, do you see the whole thing? Sorry, that it took a while to tie the loops together and put a bow on this thing, but what's true on one hand, the opposite of it is also true. Doesn't mean that it's always controllable truth. It's just true. So it's an interesting model when you start taking a look at this as in human behavior, because if I change my behavior, the other person must change theirs. Not will likely change theirs, must change theirs. And I've used that principle when we were dealing with a lot of suicidal people. If I change my approach in my discussion and flip it around to be the opposite or something different than what I'm trying to do, and that person is totally expecting bad things to happen, then they're expecting it. Okay, fine. Then change my approach. Change my approach. And what happens is they must change theirs. And
how do you intelligently change your approach instead of just doing random stuff?
Of course, you always do it. Like there's always some necessity for thinking about it. It's not just, I decided to stop yelling and started punching. Okay, not quite. Okay, doesn't really work. Okay, it's a little similar, but if you were yelling and you stopped and you started to smile and laugh because you could find humor in the situation, real, true, honest to God humor, it might be that sort of mental wake-up call for the other party, and they're going to view something has changed and something's going to happen differently. Okay, so anyway, yeah. Oh, we used to do that to our daughter. So that was Jamie. I believe that's Jamie. Anyway, cool. Yeah. So anyway, what's true on one hand, the opposite of it is also true. Cool. Okay, with that said and done, yes, we do that. Yep, it is. Cool. Thanks, Jamie. Okay. Anything else, Dwayne? Wrapping up, what worked for you?
Good. The questioning of myself.
Excellent. Okay, Beth, what worked for you tonight?
It took me a while to get my head around where you were going with the breaking down. I was, my thoughts were going a different direction, and I realized, no, that's not what he's saying. So I had to kind of shift myself there.
Right.
And sort of ask myself, okay, what is he really asking here?
By the way, part of the reason that I have panelists on is I hope to heck everybody that's on and everybody that is listening as attendees recognizes this. I do not mind being interrupted. In fact, I enjoy it. So if it's not making sense to you, feel free to interrupt me.
Okay.
Okay. In the future, please do. Okay. Anything else?
Well, it got clearer as it went on. And it was kind of neat because we have a special needs son. And a lot of this stuff you were talking about tonight, I was like, yep, that's exactly what happens with him. You know, like your first example of the outside the box thing. You know, we ask him a question and, you know, people would always ask him, how are you? And he would answer, yes.
Exactly.
Exactly. You know, it's like, yeah, I know what he's talking about there. That I didn't have any problem understanding.
Did not throw you for a loop at all. I got that one.
No, that one did not throw me for a loop at all. That's something we've worked with really hard on with him.
That's so cool. Great.
So, just that I really liked your asking the simple questions. The simpler the questions that you can ask, the faster the breakthrough. I thought that was really really key there, and getting curious and seeing the possibilities. And I thought it was really interesting how when you were breaking it down, how we ended up at the what might I do differently. And before I hadn't picked up on your specifically right now, so that was good. And yeah, and I was madly trying to write down all those questions you were throwing out at the end there. So I'm gonna have to go because I sure didn't get very many of them.
Okay.
I need those questions written out so I can keep myself on task. So
sure. Trevor did make a good point, though. This is a recording. You can go back to the end part of it, whatever part, and jot those down if you need to.
Yeah.
So cool. Okay. And John. So what? Sorry.
There's a lot here tonight. The emphasis on asking myself questions almost to the point of, you know, like talking to myself. It's kind of the way you model it, you know. Okay, now what that level of questioning, I hadn't recognized the value of.
Right.
The asking questions part is kind of, you know, it makes sense. I mean, we joke here. When I can't find something, it seems like all I need to do is start sometimes just vocalizing the question, where is, and it just appears almost, you know. I mean, I get resourceful that I find it or I remember it or it's just there. It's like magic. And,
yeah, you know, the weird thing is, it is. I have this theory. I have not studied this. I've had this similar type of problem. And Melissa, working with Melissa, my wife, Melissa has this uncanny ability to find things. She's just a finder. You know, she wasn't even around when it got lost, and she'll find it for me, which hasn't helped me actually find my own stuff. But one of the things that I did quite a few years ago is I started to actually go out there and do exactly what you said. And I ran a few weeks of doing this. Every time I just get myself curious, more curious. And I noticed not only is it more often than not in front of me, and it's not entering into my brain as a visual object, but just by getting curious about that thing, it instantly appears because I am looking for it in my head. And I've got that map, I've got that image of what I'm trying to see, and I can then see it. It's bizarre because when I don't have it in my brain that way, sometimes I can't see it. And it's literally right in front of me, like you said. And then I ask myself the question, and who snuck that in front of me? How did that appear? You know, like, it's like, it is like magic. And I totally get that. I totally get that. So scale of 1 to 10. Oh, by the way, I love it when Connie, you sort of lean out and you lean in behind. When I know I've got some really good stuff happening there, because you're out and you're looking around and checking it out and going, oh yeah, this is good stuff. So yeah, cool. So anyway, so scale of 1 to 10. Dwayne, how was tonight for you?
9.
9, great. Beth? Purple. Yes.
Purple, yes.
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 Yes. Cool.
9.
Excellent. John?
I'm giving you a 9 across the board there.
Okay, perfect. Here's the cheapest place I found. That's from Jamie. It's Amazon.com, buying choices. That's the other one, breakthrough advertising. Thank you so much. Buying choices, breakthrough advertising by Eugene Schwartz. That's another place. Thank you. Patience. Yes, thanks to all. How does the Christmas tree thing work in? Well, it was the boys and whatnot. So I think I tied that bow up. At least I hope I did. If not, re-listen to the tape. I don't think I could do it again. So anyway, it's about what, just simply put, what is true on one hand, the opposite of it is also true, was where the Christmas thing, because I sort of was messing with the guys' heads last night, giving them a conundrum to work through. Anyway, and Trevor gave the official site for that, for breakthrough advertising. Thank you, Trevor. Okay, so you've got links there of where you can buy it. Right from the horse's mouth if you want, or try Amazon. Amazon, I found, it can tend to be sometimes less expensive, frequently way more, because I've seen it on Amazon as high as $800 for the same book. So just sharing. If there's a glut of copies, it comes down, but that's rare. Okay, so we'll take you guys off here. Thank you for all the panelists showing up. You have a good night. And will be Jamie Allen. I know that you've already... her
husband didn't make it tonight.
Oh, okay. So if there's anybody on here that would like... Hey, Jackie, that's cool that you made it. Thanks for jumping on. Scott, Tim, cool. Anybody wanting to be profiled tonight, you can raise your hand.
I'll start moving everybody back in the meantime. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. See you later.
Okay.
Super.
So if you want to be profiled, raise your hand.
And
if you don't know how to raise your hand, say something.
Yeah, jump into the chat.
If you don't know how to say something, type something.
Yeah, exactly. Buy from the original source only, $125 versus $235 on Amazon. Absolutely true. And if you're in Canada, it is $30 for out of the US shipping, but it's one of the best books ever on advertising. Another top book that I have read before that was talked a lot about this week or last week in Melbourne was Ogilvy on advertising. Great ideas, great copy. One of the top advertisers in the world. So if you're thinking about copywriting, that's it. And my discovery has been I've got cool stuff, that is here that, mind models work and they've got great ability, but I've got to get the message out to more people. So I have to find the words that connect with people, because you can't find it and do this stuff any other way other than by, for lack of a better word, spreading the word. And if you guys know of people, please share, invite them on to the webinar, have them show up on Facebook, YouTube even, and register. Just, come in and sign up for the Zoom meetings. We'd love to have them on and get the word out to as many people as possible. So anyway, really appreciate all the time that you've put on. I'm spreading. Rebecca, thank you so much. I appreciate that. So, and John, it was appreciate the clarification of avatar. I'll tell you that right there was huge, is huge for me, because it shifted my way of thinking from specific to finding specific words for a marketplace, not specific words for a person. And that subtle shift is not that subtle. It's pretty dramatic. It's about a 180 degree. And we have Beth, who's raised her hand for being profiled. So, and totally agree on the avatar. That makes so much sense. Jamie and
Beth, were you wanting to be profiled? Beth was just on our panel.
I know. She's got her hand up.
Yeah, I guess you haven't profiled her before. Okay.
No, I haven't. Yes, she does. So nobody else is putting her hand up. Beth is active tonight. Hey, Beth. So you're...
Oh, you're still muted, Beth. You got a bottom left.
Perfect.
Okay, I think I'm good now.
Yeah.
Yes,
looks good from my side. Yes. Okay, so what would you... so you've been in the Yosemite area for 40 years, living on the backside of Yosemite. You've got lots of snow up there right now, probably fairly chilly. Special needs son. What else? Hobbies.
I like to sew and also weave and do a lot of handcraft things, crocheting and that kind of thing, as long as it does not involve glue or paint.
Cool.
So I'm dangerous with anything liquid.
Okay. Okie dokie.
We have 14 grandchildren.
Oh, wow.
And I homeschooled our 5 children, including our special needs son, who you kind of saw in the background there. He's now 21.
Nice.
And our other 4 children are all grown and have their own families. There's 10 years between him and our next youngest.
Wow. My goodness. Okay.
So he was our angel.
Sorry, you broke.
I said he was our little surprise angel.
Yes. Totally get that. So what do you do? What do you do in Yosemite? How do you make a living up there? Or what does your husband do?
We're not in Yosemite. Yeah, we're not in Yosemite. We're on the backside in a very small town, 600 people. My husband was, he's retired now. He worked for the county as a county planner.
Nice. Okay. Cool. Okay. What would you like to be profiled on?
For my business.
And fill me in on your business just a little bit.
I'm in the health and wellness field.
And online MLM? Or
yeah, an MLM.
Okay.
And so I've been in the it's been 18 years that we've been with the company.
Okay, that's enough.
That full time.
You are doing that full time. Good. And also in the EMP? Are you also part
Yes.
of? Yeah, I thought so. Okay, cool.
Yes, I'm part of EMP.
Okay.
I've been through their ignition, not ignition's the initial coaching, the acceleration
Okay.
program
Cool.
with them.
Okay. Sorry, I'm processing. I'm just putting bits of your conversation together and figuring things out. Confidence versus self-confidence tends to be one of them that I would definitely start there. Evaluation versus judgment as well. Okay, you know the mind model, confidence versus self-confidence, correct? Or no? I'll refresh your mind. It doesn't matter.
I'm not sure.
It's good for new people that are just on here. So confidence is others identifying your successful use of skills, attitudes, and behaviors. Self-confidence is you self-identifying your own effective use of skills, attitudes, and behaviors. You tend to accept when you do things well and effectively. You tend to minimize it, though. You don't tend to focus on exactly what's working. You tend to focus on the next thing because that one works. So what else do I need to do? And you move on quickly. That tends to be a bit of a repetitive model, but yet you are so willing to celebrate other people's wins way more than you celebrate your own wins. And that is a discontinuity that is not working. You are so effective for bringing up people around you. You are so effective at having them, be acknowledged and be rewarded, to be, made special and feel special. And yet you don't take the time to allow that for yourself. And you don't do it for yourself, which means you're not training yourself to see how effective and special you are. And I'm not talking about special in terms of making your head swell special. I'm just talking about honest to God, effective stuff that actually is working, that is there, and you tend to do it, but you brush it under the rug, so you can't learn from what is actually working at a deep enough level. You acknowledge that it worked. Don't get me wrong. Like it's not like you're ineffective, completely ineffective about this, but you go, okay, yeah, that worked. Next. It's like you're going from problem to problem to problem to problem with your own stuff. But with other people, it's like you go from problem to solution to celebration to a little bit of time to enjoy that. I don't care if it's 5 minutes or 5 hours, if it's a big deal, but it's at least 5 minutes for somebody else before you dive back into it. So the language pattern is not the same. You go to, okay, if you're writing it down, your pattern for yourself, to me, seems to be it's problem, and then you work it out, solution, and then it's back into split second, okay, that worked. But it's like you have this language of, yep, that worked, next. It's like you have got complete expectation that you were supposed to figure it out. And it almost feels like there's this, how come it didn't happen faster? Like there's this leftover feeling like from decades ago where you possibly wound up feeling, gee, I'm not that smart. I like a much more significant self-doubt. That's gone, but the residual habit, the lingering habit is still there. And that habituation of ignoring.
I'm sorry. You broke up right there and I didn't catch what you said.
Oh, okay. So
just before you said that was gone, I missed what you said.
Okay.
The computer broke up.
Okay. So the piece there was you wind up moving forward and moving through things that, like when you solve a problem, you go, okay, problem, solution, next. Not problem, solution, evaluation of what worked, celebration, then next. Okay? Like that's how you do it for everybody else around you. You'll ask them, what did you do that was effective? You'll say, what did you do that worked? What worked for you there? What did you do? How did you figure that out? And you'll get them to repeat it. And you'll do this homeschooling, tutoring approach to the people around you, but you don't self-tutor. You change the model for yourself. And I go, what's the point? It worked for everybody else. All of your kids are doing really well. I mean, hello. You might want to apply the thing that you did to get your kids working effectively, and learning effectively to yourself. Just might want to think about that. I don't know. Gee whiz, it worked really well with them. How come it's not working so well with me? Because I'm not doing exactly what I was doing with my kids. I'm skipping steps. How come? Oh, it's me. I'm allowed to skip steps. I'm allowed to take shortcuts. That's BS. You're kidding. You're killing me with this. That's nuts. That's not how it works. There is a model. There is a process flow. When it works, it works. Duplicate what works. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. You found an area of your life where you're highly effective. You might want to do it there. You do the same thing with the people in your business to some degree, but you also take on emotional burdens with some of those people in your downline, and way too many. And they're training you so that they can depend on you, as opposed to you developing them so that they can actually go further. It's a reversal here. Some of them will naturally do this on their own, but the ones that are actually coming to you and training and developing dependence because they're asking you, I need help. I can't do it on my own. The stuff we went through tonight is literally gold for you, because asking them to get resourceful, this is all about getting yourself and others resourceful. And, you were on a perfect night for you when I think about it, that questioning process, asking precision questioning, like getting that box and chunking down and tighter till they discover that whole thing. That's what we have to do. You have to do that. Then you have to get them to do it to themselves. And about role modeling. You know how to be patient. You know how to drive, but you also don't know how to be impatient appropriately. Like, you have a temper. You've got an extremely long fuse, but you do have it. Okay. And you got to shorten up that fuse. And you don't have to have it explode, but you have to have it be way firmer. And you've done that with your son that was behind you. I know about special needs kids and whatnot. I have a son that is autistic. Not a son. I mean, my sister has the son. I have a nephew that's autistic. And I've worked with special needs individuals before. And you have to have very clear boundaries. Your boundaries are the clearest with him than with anybody. I know that because you have them, and he was very appropriate for his capacity. Very appropriate, on camera and whatnot here, doing things spot on. Great. However, you don't have the same level of boundaries for some of the people that you work with. And that's where they can take advantage of you. And you're not setting boundaries very effectively for them and with them and to them at all. And that means they won't improve until you actually set boundaries for them and get them so that they have to get themselves with your guidance, but themselves mostly resourceful. Okay.
Yeah, I know when you were doing that, the concentric circles,
Yeah.
and you talking about the not asking yourself the same question you do others. I was like, bingo.
Yeah.
I said, yeah, that's me, 100%. I'm good at asking questions of everybody else but myself.
Exactly. And that's a huge gap for you. And that is probably one of the biggest gaps in your business, so that you're not leveraging yourself to that next level and beyond, because it's only by changing, by developing questions at this level and then noticing, you know, how do I change these questions to move up, to get a bigger business? What do I need to do differently? And the funny thing is, the answer almost always is, in business, you have to simplify and ask simpler, deeper questions, not bigger, more complicated questions. That rarely works. Occasionally it does, but that's like 1 in 100, 1 in 200. The things that work repeatedly, like incredibly reliably, is simplify the question, get resourceful, get curious. And that changes everything, because you'll see different patterns arise that were always there. You just didn't see them because you didn't open your mouth. Like, remember when John and I were talking about didn't see them because we didn't open our mind? The same thing is freaking true in business. It's there right in front of you. But if you don't ask those questions, you can't see them. Your brain isn't prepared to see that difference. So, yeah. So anyway, how was that for you?
Yeah, that was great.
Okay, what specifically worked?
Very true.
What didn't work? And a rating.
Just really identifying that I wasn't asking myself the questions, because that just really confirmed what I already knew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny how a person who doesn't really know you at all, me, gives you something that you already know, and you go, damn, that's good. You know, like, I got to pay attention to that. I knew that already, but that's really, really effective.
Yeah. Well, I didn't really know it until half an hour ago when you shared it on the.
Yeah, but the point here is that you knew it at some level. That's right. You knew it at some level, because you wouldn't be able to see. The thing with mind models is mind models were designed to be sticky behaviors and stick in people's brains. The way that you design them is you work really, really, really hard at finding chunks of information that are really common in most people that most people don't see, but they do. You ask questions, but do you ask simple questions? Well, sometimes you do. And you've been asked simple questions, and it really hits you, and it's impactful. And then you start realizing, gee, when I've done that, that has worked really well for others. When I've done that to me, that really works well with others. But what did I do? You don't ask, what is that? And what makes that work? And that's what I did. And I went, break it down. And simple, clear questions that get to the heart of what is meant, not what is said. Go after the meaning, not the literal definitions of each word, but what is said. Okay?
Okay. Yeah. I don't think there was anything that didn't work.
Cool.
So
rating 1 to 10.
I'll go with a 9 again.
Awesome. Great. I generally target an 8, but I was going, I definitely go for an 8+ today with you, because I go, yeah, I can nail these things down, but it's not scary for you. It's not weird. So I don't like going too much above an 8 on a consistent basis. I don't want to freak people out. That's my target, or my rationale behind it, my intention, actually. So anyway, so thank you very much, Beth. Really appreciate you being on this week. And Trevor, anytime you want to pop back on.
I'm back.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks for coming on, Beth. I'll move you back to an attendee. Okay. All right. So, anything else we needed to cover? Or
no.
remarks?
There were just a bunch of different things that I'm notice was happening in the chat there. Anyway.
Yeah, I was just talking to a couple people about
Samara might. Oh, okay.
I was chatting with Rebecca and stuff.
Okay, cool. Great. So we're multifunctional tonight at team.
Yes.
Cool. Great. Good job. Really enjoyed your input here, Trevor, tonight. Really like the fact that you stepped up and got in. Really liked that a ton. So please keep that up. Anyway, just want to thank everybody for coming on and making the Blair Dunkley Experience Tuesday night webinar happen again. And enjoy, and we'll see you next week. Same time, same station. Well, same webinar at the very least. Anyway, thanks so much, everybody. Have a great one. See you next week.
See you guys.